Prince Harry painted a picture of absolute betrayal, weaponizing his memoir to brand his own brother as a violent, raging bully who violently threw him to the floor over a mere disagreement. The world gasped at the image of the shattered dog bowl, the snapped necklace, and the supposedly unprovoked attack that cemented Harry's self-appointed status as the ultimate victim. But what if that meticulously crafted narrative of victimhood was actually the greatest psychological cover-up in modern royal history? Exclusive insider reports and highly suppressed dossiers are now painting a terrifyingly different picture of what really happened behind the heavy, gilded doors of Kensington Palace. It wasn't an unprovoked attack by a jealous heir. It was a desperate, calculated intervention. Prince William wasn't raging at his brother. He was stepping into the line of fire to shield paralysed, terrified palace employees from Meghan Markle's alleged psychological warfare. The true story of his confrontation is far darker than anyone ever realised, and the hidden evidence is finally leaking out. Before we expose the explosive hidden dossiers and the chilling truth behind the Sussex's sudden exit, hit that subscribe button and leave a like on this video to support our channel as we continue to dig past the PR spin and uncover the unvarnished reality of the royal family.
To understand the sheer magnitude of the deception, we have to pull back the curtain on the suffocating, paranoid atmosphere that had entirely consumed the Sussex household by the summer of 2018. Publicly, the world was still intoxicated by the glowing aftermath of the fairy tale royal wedding. Meghan was being aggressively marketed as the ultimate modernizer, a champion of female empowerment and a voice for the voiceless. But exclusively leaked theories and insider reports suggest that the private reality was a horrifying contradiction of this meticulously curated brand. The echoing historic corridors of Kensington Palace had reportedly become a psychological minefield. Behind closed doors, ambitious, highly competent female staff members, women who had dedicated their lives to serving the crown with quiet dignity, were being systematically broken down. The very women Meghan claimed to champion on the global stage were allegedly hiding in supply closets, trembling with anxiety, their phones buzzing relentlessly with demanding, sharply worded text messages at all hours of the night. According to explosive reports, the situation had rapidly escalated from mere friction into a full-blown crisis of occupational survival. Two of Meghan's female personal assistants had already handed in their resignations within months of the wedding, fleeing what insiders described as an utterly desperate atmosphere. These were not novices. These were seasoned professionals who had navigated the complex, high-stakes environment of the monarchy for years. Yet, they were reportedly driven to the brink, utterly crushed by a dynamic that insiders claim was defined by impossible demands, sudden emotional outbursts, and a chilling lack of basic human empathy. Insider accounts speak of a secret shadow dossier compiled by frantic HR executives, a locked file containing sworn testimonies from staff members who were reportedly physically sick with stress, taking extended medical leave just to avoid the unbearable dread of being on duty with the Sussexes. The hypocrisy is absolutely staggering. Harry and Meghan have built an incredibly lucrative global empire upon the pillars of mental health advocacy and emotional wellness. They sit on lavish stages, bathed in soft lighting, preaching to the masses about the vital importance of psychological safety and protecting one's inner peace. Yet, exclusive theories suggest that while they were polishing their halos for the cameras, they were the direct, unmitigated cause of severe psychological distress for the working class staff serving them. It is a double bind of epic proportions. How does a self-proclaimed global champion of women's rights reconcile the alleged fact that her mere presence was enough to reduce dedicated female aides to tears? The answer, according to deeply placed sources, is that she never did. The Sussexes reportedly possessed wildly inflated egos that completely blinded them to the carnage left in their wake. They were entirely unwilling to concede that they were the architects of their own chaotic environment, stubbornly refusing to accept any constructive help, guidance, or accountability from the institution that was desperately trying to save them from themselves. This intolerable environment finally forced Prince William's hand, leading to the explosive confrontation that Harry would later twist so masterfully in his memoir. By July 2018, William and Kate knew the situation could no longer be contained by polite memos and quiet reassignments. The future king, reportedly armed with undeniable evidence and deeply disturbed by the emotional devastation of his loyal staff, invited the Sussexes to his apartment for what was cautiously billed as clear air talks. But there was no air to be cleared. The atmosphere in that room was thick with unsaid accusations and impending doom. The mahogany doors clicked shut, severing them from the outside world, and the trap was sprung. Insider reports suggest that William did not hold back. He looked his brother in the eye and explicitly accused Meghan of being relentlessly difficult and inexplicably rude to her personal assistants. He did not mince words. He laid out the timeline, the sudden resignations, the tears, and the sheer terror gripping the household. William was stepping up as a protector, directly challenging a narrative of perfection that Harry had swallowed whole. But instead of recognizing the gravity of the situation, instead of looking inward or offering a shred of compassion for the destroyed staff, Harry allegedly went on the offensive. He spun a defensive web of denial, immediately defaulting to the narrative of victimhood that would soon become his defining characteristic. He could not, or would not, process the reality that the woman he married was allegedly terrorizing the people who worked for them. In Harry's mind, any criticism of Meghan, no matter how rigorously documented or desperately presented, was an act of treason. He cried foul, completely erasing the traumatized aides from the equation to focus entirely on his own perceived persecution. Theories suggest that Harry's blind rage during this intervention was so absolute, so entirely disconnected from reality, that William realized in a chilling, heart-stopping moment that his brother was truly gone. As the confrontation reached its boiling point, the concrete examples of abuse were allegedly laid bare on the table. A highly placed palace source reportedly confirmed in intercepted communications that the relationship between the Sussexes and their team was not just strained, it was categorized as very, very bad at the absolute highest levels of the monarchy. This destroys the entire foundation of Harry's defensive claims. He has spent years insisting that the bullying allegations were a fabricated smear campaign, a sudden, vindictive leak engineered by the palace to discredit them right before their infamous Oprah interview. But these exclusive insider theories prove that the horrific treatment of staff was known, documented, and fiercely debated at the apex of royal power long before a single word ever leaked to the press. It was the darkest, most closely guarded secret in London, held back only by the royal family's desperate desire to protect Harry from the catastrophic fallout of his own choices. The psychological profile of this moment is deeply unsettling. We see a future king standing his ground, demanding basic human decency for the people who serve the crown, while his brother deflects, and deflects. Harry reduced a profound systemic crisis of workplace abuse down to a scuffle over a dog bowl. He utilized the visceral imagery of a broken necklace and a bruised back to cast himself as the battered survivor of an archaic, violent institution. But when viewed through the lens of these insider reports, Harry's narrative collapses entirely. It reveals a chilling inauthenticity, a willingness to weaponize his own family members to distract the global public from the alleged cruelty unfolding in his own living room. The broken dog bowl wasn't the tragedy. The tragedy was the shattered nerves and derailed careers of the innocent people caught in the crossfire of Meghan's unyielding demands. It was in the suffocating silence following this bitter confrontation that the point of no return was quietly crossed. William, his face set in a mask of stoic resignation, reportedly looked at his brother and realized deep down that there would be no coming back from this abyss. He saw that Harry's loyalty to this toxic behavioral pattern superseded his loyalty to the truth, to his family, and to basic morality. The devastating revelations continuously emerging from royal authors and insiders, information widely believed by exclusive theorists to be tacitly greenlit by Kensington Palace itself, permanently dismantle Harry's carefully constructed fortress of victimhood. It vindicates Prince William once and for all, not as the raging bully of a spiteful memoir, but as the only man in the room brave enough to stand up to a master manipulator. The cover-up is unraveling, the hidden dossiers are burning through the PR spin, and the dark reality of the Sussexes' reign of terror is finally seeing the light of day. As the echoes of that catastrophic confrontation faded into the heavy, velvet-draped silence of Kensington Palace, the true psychological warfare was only just beginning. The staff members who had silently prayed that Prince William's intervention would be their salvation soon realized, with a creeping sense of absolute dread, that it had instead ignited a far more volatile powder keg. Insider reports and deeply buried palace dossiers suggest that the Sussexes did not retreat, reflect, or apologize. Instead, they allegedly doubled down, viewing the desperate plea for basic human decency not as a wake-up call, but as a direct, treasonous declaration of war against their fiercely guarded brand. The atmosphere inside their royal household reportedly mutated from overwhelmingly tense to outright draconian. The future king had drawn a line in the sand to protect the innocent. But Harry and Meghan, fueled by an intoxicating blend of paranoia and staggering entitlement, simply decided to burn the entire beach. Behind the historic, fortress-like walls of the royal estate, a chilling campaign of alleged retaliation quietly commenced. Exclusive theories paint a harrowing picture of what followed. The relentless barrage of midnight emails reportedly grew sharper. The impossible demands became even more erratic, and the crushing, icy disdain directed at the very aides who were desperately trying to keep the Sussex machine running reached unprecedented levels of toxicity. The bureaucratic machinery of the British monarchy, an institution designed to withstand world wars and global scandals, found itself entirely paralyzed by a threat it had never been engineered to fight: an internal psychological insurgency. Highly confidential, communications among the highest-ranking courtiers reportedly reveal a state of utter institutional panic. Human resources executives, accustomed to managing the polite, predictable logistics of royal tours and charity galas, were suddenly staring down a labyrinthine crisis of occupational survival. They were allegedly compiling secret, locked-away testimonies from shell-shocked female employees who were physically breaking down under the relentless pressure. We are talking about highly educated, fiercely loyal working-class women who were reportedly waking up in cold sweats, entirely consumed by the nauseating terror of simply going to their jobs. The professional stakes were escalating with terrifying speed. Insiders claim that the Sussexes' orbit had become an intolerable vacuum of empathy, where dedicated aides were treated not as human beings, but as disposable collateral damage in Harry and Meghan's relentless pursuit of absolute, unquestioned dominance. It was a staggering betrayal of the very progressive values they were so aggressively marketing to the outside world. You must understand the profound, sickening hypocrisy of this historical moment. On the global stage, the Sussexes were meticulously crafting a billion-dollar empire built entirely on the fragile foundation of mental health advocacy and compassionate leadership. They were looking into the lenses of international broadcasters, speaking in hushed, therapeutic tones about the desperate need to protect one's emotional well-being and the toxic nature of institutional neglect. Yet, simultaneously, reports allege that their own private offices were operating as a psychological meat grinder. They were preaching about the trauma of feeling unheard, while allegedly systematically silencing, isolating, and traumatizing the women whose sole professional duty was to serve them. It is a dual reality so fiercely contradictory that it borders on the surreal. When confronted with the weeping, shattered reality of their own staff, Harry and Meghan reportedly exhibited a deeply disturbing behavioral flaw: a total clinical inability to self-reflect. Deeply placed sources suggest that their wildly inflated egos operated as an impenetrable shield, deflecting any criticism, any plea for mercy, and any attempt at institutional intervention by instantly categorizing themselves as the ultimate tragic victims of a massive, shadowy conspiracy. Prince Harry's complicity in this alleged reign of terror is perhaps the darkest, most tragic twist in this entire unfolding saga. He had spent his entire life watching the women in his family navigate the intense, crushing pressure of royal duty. Yet when the cruelty was reportedly coming from inside his own home, he aggressively turned a blind eye. Instead of reigning in the chaos, insider theories suggest that Harry became the ultimate enabler, fiercely weaponizing his royal status to crush anyone who dared to challenge his wife's erratic behavior. When his own brother, a man who had stood shoulder to shoulder with him through the darkest traumas of their childhood, presented him with undeniable, meticulously documented proof of staff abuse, Harry did not see a protector. He saw a jealous heir attempting to sabotage his newfound happiness. Harry's entire narrative of a broken dog bowl and a ripped necklace is a masterclass in psychological deflection. By focusing the world's attention on a fleeting physical scuffle, he successfully orchestrated a monumental cover-up, bearing the prolonged, agonizing emotional abuse that palace staff were allegedly enduring daily. He wanted the world to weep for his bruised back, completely ignoring the shattered careers and severe mental distress of the loyal aides who were left weeping in the palace hallways. The realization that his brother was inextricably chained to this toxic dynamic hit Prince William with the force of a physical blow. The dossiers imply that it was during this exact suffocating period that the institutional firewall was quietly, permanently erected. William, observing the sheer lack of remorse and the terrifying escalation of the Sussex's victim complex, knew that the monarchy's reputation, and more importantly, the psychological safety of its employees, could no longer be sacrificed on the altar of Harry's delusions. The palace could not, in good conscience, continue to shield a couple who were allegedly destroying the institution from the inside out, while demanding unquestioning loyalty and unlimited funding. The exclusive theories surrounding this timeline suggest that the infamous royal exit was not a bold, independent escape to freedom orchestrated by a fiercely independent couple. Instead, it was the inevitable, explosive rupture of an environment that had simply become too toxic to sustain. The Sussexes did not flee a racist, unsupportive institution. Rather, the reality suggests the institution finally stopped bending to their impossible, destructive will, refusing to let another innocent staff member fall victim to Meghan's alleged wrath. The devastating truth, slowly bleeding out from the sealed vaults of Kensington Palace, permanently rewrites the history of the modern monarchy, exposing the Sussexes' fairy tale as nothing more than a beautifully decorated, inescapable nightmare. As the dust settled on what would become the most infamous, meticulously disguised royal exit in modern history, a new and even more terrifying chapter of this psychological thriller began to unfold in the shadows. We are now seeing the catastrophic endgame of that dark summer of 2018, brought into sharp, undeniable focus by a recent, explosive update that has sent absolute shockwaves through the highest echelons of the British aristocracy. Just weeks ago, exclusive, insider reports surfaced detailing the alleged existence of a secondary, highly classified shadow dossier, a devastating compilation of fresh testimonies and suppressed HR communications that have miraculously survived years of aggressive institutional scrubbing. These exclusive theories suggest that the true scale of the Sussexes' alleged reign of terror was not merely confined to a few disgruntled personal assistants, but was actually a systemic, localized epidemic of psychological abuse that threatened to destabilize the entire operational foundation of the royal household. This newly unearthed intelligence paints a staggering picture. It claims that in the final, suffocating months before their departure, the Sussexes' private office had devolved into a full-blown state of professional quarantine, where seasoned palace aides from entirely different departments flatly refused to be transferred into Meghan's direct line of sight, citing severe, medically documented anxiety and the very real threat of sudden, unprovoked emotional obliteration. This recent update utterly annihilates the last remaining threads of Prince Harry's meticulously constructed victim narrative. For years, he has successfully manipulated the global media, leveraging his inherited trauma to cast himself and his wife as the hunted, helpless prey of a cold, archaic institution. He commanded millions of dollars to sit in front of blinding studio lights and weep about his family's lack of support, painting his brother as a violent, unhinged enforcer. But the contents of this newly surfaced shadow dossier entirely invert that reality. The chilling truth, according to deeply placed, exclusive theorists, is that Prince William was not acting as an enforcer for the crown. He was acting as a human shield for the working-class backbone of the monarchy. The recent leaks allegedly confirm that William took the unprecedented step of bypassing the traditional, sluggish bureaucratic channels of palace HR, directly confronting the Sussexes because he was privately receiving frantic, tear-stained pleas for help from women who felt entirely trapped by Meghan's draconian demands. William reportedly sacrificed his own relationship with his brother, knowing full well that Harry would one day weaponize the intervention, all to ensure that not one more dedicated female staff member would be broken down in the echoing, gilded hallways of Kensington Palace. The profound, agonizing irony of this entire saga is the jarring, almost psychotic disconnect between the Sussexes' public brand and their alleged private reality. Today, Meghan aggressively markets herself to the world as the ultimate arbiter of modern compassion, launching lifestyle brands and producing glossy, soft-focused content dedicated to female empowerment, emotional wellness, and breaking the cycles of institutional trauma. Yet, these insider reports suggest that the very foundation of her royal tenure was built upon the crushed spirits of the women she claimed to champion. The hypocrisy is not just thematic, it is visceral, documented, and absolutely staggering. How does one reconcile the image of a global philanthropist preaching about the vital importance of mental health with the alleged reality of a woman whose mere text messages were enough to send highly trained, fiercely resilient professionals into debilitating panic attacks? The answer, buried deep within these exclusive theories, is that there is no reconciliation. There is only a terrifying, clinical level of megalomania, a complete, blinding inability to perceive anyone else's humanity if it momentarily inconveniences their own fiercely inflated sense of self-importance. Harry and Meghan allegedly created a reality distortion field so powerful that they truly believed their own PR, convincing themselves that their horrific treatment of loyal staff was simply the necessary byproduct of their own unparalleled greatness. In the stark, unforgiving light of these recent revelations, the psychological portrait of Prince Harry transforms from a tragic, misunderstood prince into something entirely more sinister. A complicit enabler who eagerly sold out his own flesh and blood to protect an indefensible lie. When he sat down to pen his memoir, Spare, he made a calculated, deeply malicious choice. He knew the world would devour the salacious details of a physical altercation. He knew that by obsessively focusing on a broken dog bowl and a snapped necklace, he could expertly distract the global public from asking the real, terrifying question. Why was his brother so furious in the first place? Harry's entire narrative was a Machiavellian sleight of hand, designed to permanently smear Prince William's character before the true, unvarnished history of Meghan's alleged bullying could fully come to light. But Harry gravely underestimated the relentless, inevitable march of truth. He failed to realize that the silent, stoic loyalty of the royal staff, the very people he allegedly cast aside as disposable collateral damage, would eventually find its voice through these, yet fiercely compelling insider leaks. The ghosts of the Kensington Palace corridors are finally speaking, and they are painting a portrait of the Sussexes that no amount of Hollywood PR spinning can ever undo. Prince William now stands completely, historically vindicated. For years, the future king bore the brunt of his brother's relentless, agonizing public betrayals with gritted teeth and dignified, crushing silence. He absorbed the smears, the accusations of jealousy, and the brutal character assassinations, refusing to drag the crown into a petty, undignified public shouting match. But this silent endurance was not a sign of weakness. It was the ultimate display of absolute, unyielding strength. William knew that the dossiers existed. He knew the testimonies of the traumatized aides were safely locked away in the palace vaults. He knew that, eventually, the sheer, unsustainable weight of the Sussexes' own toxic behavior would cause their carefully constructed empire of lies to collapse in on itself. By stepping into the line of fire in July 2018, William proved that he possesses the exact moral fortitude required of a reigning monarch. He demonstrated that he values the psychological safety and basic human dignity of the people who serve the crown far more than he values the fragile ego of a deeply compromised, entirely unpredictable younger brother. William recognized that the cancer of the Sussexes' alleged cruelty had to be violently excised from the institution, no matter the catastrophic personal cost to his own family dynamic. This devastating revelation permanently destroys the fairy tale. The point of no return has not just been crossed. The bridge has been entirely incinerated, the ashes scattered to the winds of history. The reports and exclusive insider theories that continue to bleed from the heavy, iron-wrought gates of the palace have stripped Harry and Meghan of their armor of victimhood, exposing them to the harsh, unforgiving judgment of a world that is finally waking up to the truth. They are now isolated in a self-made fortress of paranoia and declining relevance, desperately clinging to a fabricated narrative that is unraveling faster than they can stitch it back together. The story of the broken dog bowl will no longer be remembered as a symbol of Harry's victimization. It will go down in history as the desperate, pathetic smokescreen of a man trying to hide the alleged trail of psychological destruction left in his wife's wake. The cover-up has failed. The silence has been broken. The dark, unvarnished reality of what truly happened behind those closed doors is finally out in the open, and the global perception of the Sussexes will never, ever be the same again. Before we continue to expose the deepest, darkest secrets hidden behind the fortress walls of the monarchy, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an explosive update. The truth is finally fighting back against the PR spin, and we are going to be right here, breaking down every report, every hidden dossier and every exclusive theory until the complete, unedited reality of the royal family is entirely exposed to the light of day. Drop a comment below and let us know what you think about William's heroic intervention. And stay tuned because the next revelation is going to shake the institution to its very core.